My journey to New York, a story of learning English and never giving up. Hi, everyone. My name is Elena, and I have a story to tell you. A story filled with excitement, challenges, and most importantly, a journey of learning. This is the story of how my best friend Sophia and I traveled to New York to improve our English. It was a trip full of ups and downs, laughter and tears, and a lot of growth. Since we were little girls, Sophia and I dreamed of visiting New York. We would watch movies and see pictures of the city, bright lights, and busy streets. We always said, one day, we will go there. But there was one more thing we both wanted: to speak English fluently. We knew that being able to speak English would open up many opportunities for us. We could travel, meet new people, and have better jobs. So, we made a plan. We would go to New York, not just to see the city, but to improve our English. One day, while we were having coffee at our favorite cafe in our small town, Sophia said, "Elena, it's time. Let's go to New York this summer. We can take a vacation and improve our English at the same time." My heart skipped a beat. I had always wanted to go, but now that the moment was here, I felt nervous. "Do you think we're ready?" I asked. Sophia smiled. "We will never be ready if we don't take the first step. It's now or never." She was right. We had been studying English in school, but it wasn't enough. We needed real practice, real experience. So we decided, this summer we would go to New York. Chapter 2. Preparing for the trip. Preparing for our trip was not easy. First, we had to save money. Sophia and I both worked hard. I babysat for my neighbors, and Sophia worked at her uncle's store. We saved every dollar we could. Every day we talked about our plans, about all the things we wanted to do in New York. "We have to visit the Statue of Liberty," Sophia said one day. "Yes, and Central Park," I added. "And we should try to speak English as much as possible. We can practice ordering food, asking for directions, everything." We practiced our English together every day. We listened to English songs, watched English movies, and read English books. We wanted to be ready, but the more we practiced, the more we realized how much we didn't know. "What if we can't understand people?" Sophia asked one evening. I felt the same fear. "We might make mistakes," I admitted. "But we have to try. This is our chance." Finally, the day came when we bought our plane tickets. We were so excited. But as the day of our departure grew closer, I began to feel nervous. What if everything went wrong? What if we got lost? What if we couldn't communicate with anyone? But Sophia, always the brave one, reassured me. "We'll be okay, Elena. We have each other, and we're going to learn so much. It's going to be an adventure." And with that, our adventure began. Chapter 3. Arriving in New York. The day we arrived in New York was both exciting and terrifying. The moment we stepped off the plane, we were surrounded by people speaking English, fast, loud, and with so many different accents. It felt like a wave of words crashing over us, and for a moment, I felt completely lost. We followed the signs to the baggage claim, but the airport was huge, and we quickly realized we didn't know where to go next. I turned to Sophia, who looked just as confused as I felt. Do you think we should ask someone for help? Sophia nodded, but neither of us moved. The idea of talking to a stranger in English was intimidating. Finally, I gathered the courage and approached a woman who was looking at her phone. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking a little. "Can you help us find the baggage claim?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Sure. Just follow the signs that say baggage claim. It's down that hallway, then to the right." I nodded, trying to process her instructions. "Thank you," I managed to say. We followed her directions, and soon we found the baggage claim area. I felt a small surge of confidence. We had done it. We had asked for help in English and understood the answer. It was a small victory, but it felt big to us. After getting our luggage, we had to find our way to the hotel. This was our next challenge. We knew the name of the hotel, but we weren't sure how to get there. We found a sign for taxis and decided to take one. When we reached the taxi line, the driver asked, "Where to?" Sophia and I looked at each other, unsure of what to say. I took a deep breath and said the name of the hotel. The driver nodded and started driving. We sat in the back, watching the city pass by outside the window. It was a mix of excitement and nerves. Everything was so big and new. When we finally arrived at the hotel, we realized we had another challenge ahead of us: checking in. The lobby was busy, and there was a long line of people waiting at the front desk. We waited our turn, rehearsing what we would say in our heads. "Hello," I said when we finally reached the front desk. "We have a reservation." The woman at the desk smiled and asked for our names. I gave her my name, and she typed something into the computer. Then she asked, "Would you like a room with one bed or two?" I froze. I wasn't sure what she meant. Sophia quickly answered, "Two beds, please." The woman handed us the room keys and gave us directions to the elevator. We thanked her and hurried to the elevator. Once we were inside, we both let out a sigh of relief. "That was harder than I thought," I admitted. Sophia nodded. "But we did it. And now, we're here. We're really in New York." We reached our room and unpacked our bags. The room was small but cozy, with a view of the busy street below. We were exhausted from the long journey, but also excited. Tomorrow we would begin exploring the city and improving our English. Chapter 4: Visiting Aunt Clara. The next morning, we woke up early. We were still tired from the flight, but the excitement of being in New York gave us energy. Today, we were going to visit my Aunt Clara. She lived in Queens with her husband, John. Aunt Clara had moved to New York many years ago, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. Sophia and I took the subway to Queens. The subway was crowded, and we had to stand the whole way. It was another opportunity to practice our English. We listened to the announcements, trying to understand them, and looked at the map to make sure we were on the right train. When we arrived at Aunt Clara's house, she greeted us with a big hug. "Elena, Sophia, it's so good to see you," she exclaimed. Aunt Clara's house was warm and welcoming. She led us to the living room, where her husband John was waiting. John was American, and he spoke only English. I was a little nervous about talking to him, but he smiled warmly and made us feel comfortable. "Welcome to New York," John said. How was your trip? It was good, Sophia answered, and I nodded in agreement. We spent the afternoon talking and catching up. Aunt Clara told us about her life in New York, and we told her about our plans to improve our English. I'm so proud of you girls, Aunt Clara said. It's not easy to travel to a new country and speak a new language, but you're doing great. John nodded. If you want to improve your English, I have some advice for you. Sophia and I leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. The first thing you should do is read. Read everything you can. In English, of course. Read books, newspapers, signs, menus, anything you can find. And don't just read silently. Read out loud. It will help you practice your pronunciation and get used to the sound of English. I nodded, thinking about the book I had brought with me. I decided I would start reading it out loud every day. The second thing, John continued, is to write. Write in English every day. You can keep a journal, write letters, or even text each other in English. The more you write, the better you'll get. And don't worry about making mistakes. That's how you learn. Sophia and I exchanged a look. We both used WhatsApp to chat, but we usually did it in Spanish. We decided that from now on we would only text each other in English. And the last thing, John said, is to speak. Speak English as much as possible. I know it's hard, but the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a new language. Aunt Clara smiled and added, and if you really want to practice, why don't you try getting a part-time job? You could work at a cafe or a store. It would give you a chance to talk to different people and hear different accents. It's a great way to improve your English. The idea of getting a job in New York was both exciting and scary. Sophia and I looked at each other, wondering if we were ready for that challenge. But we knew that Aunt Clara and John were right. The more we pushed ourselves, the more we would learn. After lunch, Aunt Clara took us on a tour of her neighborhood. She showed us the local shops, parks, and restaurants. Everywhere we went, we practiced speaking English. It was hard, but it was also fun. We were starting to feel more comfortable, little by little. Chapter 5. Taking John's Advice. The next day, we decided to take John's advice and start practicing our English even more. First, we went to a bookstore near our hotel. The store was filled with books in English, and we spent hours browsing the shelves. I found a book that looked interesting and decided to buy it. When we got back to our room, I started reading the book out loud, just like John had suggested. At first, it felt strange and a little embarrassing. I stumbled over some words, and my pronunciation wasn't perfect, but I kept going. The more I read, the more confident I became. Sophia did the same with her book. We took turns reading out loud to each other, correcting each other's mistakes, and practicing new words. It was a great way to learn, and it also made us laugh. That evening, we decided to follow John's second piece of advice: writing. We opened our WhatsApp chat and started texting each other in English. At first, it was difficult. We had to think carefully about every word, and we used our dictionaries a lot. But it was also fun. We were learning new words and phrases, and we were helping each other. Hey, what are you doing now? I texted Sophia. I'm reading my book. It's really interesting, she replied. What's it about? It's about a girl who travels to New York to study. It's just like us. We laughed and continued chatting in English. It felt good to practice, and it made us feel more connected to each other and to our goal of improving our English. The next day, we took the final step in John's advice. We decided to look for a part-time job. It was a big decision, and we were both nervous. But we knew that working in New York would give us the chance to practice our English in real situations. We walked around the neighborhood looking for help wanted signs. After a few hours, we found a small cafe that was hiring. The cafe was cozy and friendly, and the owner, Mrs. Thompson, was a kind woman who welcomed us with a smile. Hi, I'm Elena and this is Sophia, I said nervously. We saw your sign. Are you still looking for help? Yes, I am, Mrs. Thompson replied. Have you ever worked in a cafe before? No, but we're fast learners, Sophia said quickly. Mrs. Thompson smiled. Well, we all have to start somewhere. Why don't you both come in tomorrow and we'll see how it goes? We thanked her and left the cafe, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. We had taken a big step, and tomorrow we would start our first job in New York. Chapter 6. The First Day at Work. The next morning, Sophia and I woke up early, feeling a bit nervous. It was our first day at the cafe, and we didn't know what to expect. We dressed in comfortable clothes and walked to the cafe, practicing what we would say when we got there. When we arrived, Mrs. Thompson greeted us warmly. Good morning, girls. Are you ready to start? Yes, we both said, trying to sound confident. Mrs. Thompson showed us around the cafe, explaining how everything worked. She taught us how to take orders, make coffee, and serve customers. There was a lot to learn, and it was overwhelming at first. The first customer of the day was an elderly man who came in for his morning coffee. I took a deep breath and approached him. Good morning. What would you like to order? He smiled and said, I'll have a black coffee, please. I repeated his order to make sure I got it right. One black coffee coming right up. I went to the counter and made the coffee, my hands shaking a little. When I handed it to him, he smiled and said, Thank you, dear. It was a simple interaction, but it felt like a huge accomplishment. I had spoken English, taken an order, and served a customer, all by myself. As the day went on, more customers came in. Sophia and I took turns taking orders and making coffee. We made mistakes, of course. Sometimes we forgot an order or got confused about what the customer wanted. But Mrs. Thompson was patient and kind, and she helped us whenever we needed it. By the end of the day, we were exhausted but happy. We had worked hard, practiced our English, and learned a lot. As we walked back to our hotel, Sophia turned to me and said, Can you believe it? We're really doing it. We're working in New York. I smiled, feeling proud of both of us. Yes, we are, and we're getting better every day. Chapter 7. Growing Confidence. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia and I became more confident in our English and in our work at the cafe. We started to recognize the regular customers and learned their orders by heart. We also began to understand the different accents and ways of speaking that people had. It was challenging, but it was also exciting. One day, a customer came in who spoke very quickly. I could barely understand him. and I felt a wave of panic. But instead of giving up, I politely asked him to repeat what he had said. He slowed down and repeated his order, and I was able to understand him. After he left, Mrs. Thompson came over and said, "You did well, Elena. Don't be afraid to ask people to repeat themselves. It's part of learning." Her words gave me confidence. I realized that it was okay to ask for help, to make mistakes, and to keep trying. Every day was a new opportunity to learn and improve. Sophia and I continued to follow John's advice. We read books out loud, wrote in English, and spoke as much as we could. We even started practicing English with each other outside of work. We went to the park, the museum, and the library, and we made it a rule to speak only in English. One day, we decided to visit the Empire State Building. It was a place we had always dreamed of seeing. As we stood at the top, looking out at the city below, I felt a sense of accomplishment. We had come so far since we first arrived in New York. We had faced challenges, but we had also grown stronger and more confident. Sophia turned to me and said, "Elena, I'm so glad we decided to come here. This trip has changed us." I nodded, feeling the same way. Me too. We've learned so much, and we've done things we never thought we could do. As we stood there, looking out at the city, I realized that New York had become more than just a place to visit. It had become a part of us, a place where we had grown, learned, and faced our fears. Chapter 8. A Special Moment. One day, something special happened at the cafe. It was a busy afternoon, and the cafe was full of customers. Sophia and I were working hard, taking orders and making coffee. Suddenly, a woman came in with her young daughter. The little girl looked shy and nervous, holding tightly to her mother's hand. The woman ordered a coffee and asked if we had any hot chocolate for her daughter. I smiled at the little girl and said, "Of course. One hot chocolate coming right up." As I made the hot chocolate, I noticed that the little girl was watching me. I handed her the cup and said, "Here you go. I hope you like it." The little girl looked up at me with big, bright eyes and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly. Her mother smiled and thanked me too. They sat down at a table and I watched as the little girl took a sip of her hot chocolate. Her smile grew even bigger, and she looked so happy. In that moment, I felt a warmth in my heart. I realized that I had used my English to make a difference, even in a small way. I had made someone's day a little brighter, and it made me feel proud. Later that evening, as Sophia and I were closing the cafe, I told her about the little girl. Sophia smiled and said, "That's what it's all about, Elena. It's not just about learning English. It's about connecting with people, making them feel welcome, and being a part of their lives." I nodded, feeling grateful for the experience. I realized that our journey to New York had been about so much more than just improving our English. It had been about growing as people, facing challenges, and finding joy in the small moments. Chapter 9. The End of the Journey. After several months in New York, it was time for Sophia and me to go back home. Our time in the city had been an incredible journey, full of learning, growth, and unforgettable experiences. But as much as we loved New York, we were also excited to see our families and friends again. On our last day at the cafe, Mrs. Thompson surprised us with a small farewell party. She had baked a cake, and some of the regular customers came to say goodbye. We were touched by their kindness and the friendships we had made. As we said our goodbyes, Mrs. Thompson gave us each a hug and said, "I'm so proud of you girls. You've grown so much since you first walked through that door. Remember, the learning never stops. Keep practicing, keep pushing yourselves, and never give up." Her words stayed with me as we packed our bags and prepared to leave the city. Sophia and I took one last walk through the streets of New York, visiting the places that had become special to us. We went to Central Park, Times Square, and of course, the Empire State Building. As we stood at the top of the Empire State Building once more, looking out at the city that had become a part of us, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had come to New York with a dream, and we were leaving with so much more. We had learned, grown, and faced our fears. We had made mistakes, but we had also made progress, and most importantly, we had never given up. Sophia turned to me and said, "Elena, this is just the beginning. We've learned so much, and now we can take that with us wherever we go." I nodded, feeling the same way. Yes, this is just the beginning. We'll keep learning, keep growing, and keep challenging ourselves. As we boarded the plane back home, I looked out the window at the city below. I knew that New York would always hold a special place in my heart. It was the city that had taught me to be brave, to face challenges, and to never give up. Conclusion. And so, our journey to New York came to an end. But the lessons we learned will stay with us forever. I hope my story inspires you to follow your dreams, to face challenges with courage, and to never give up. Remember, every small step is progress, and every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you all the best on your own journey of learning and growth.
If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure you don't miss our next video, where we have an exciting and engaging story for you to practice your listening skills. Click here to watch the video and continue your English learning journey.